Hello and welcome into another powerful and purposeful episode of Perseverance Live, where ordinary people share their extraordinary stories of faith, focus, and fortitude. Their stories inspire us, they educate us, they empower us to embrace our own pain and our own purpose to achieve significant service and success. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Vera Jones, and today we're spotlighting another Jones, Ranee Jones, who is founder of Treasures for Trauma Incorporated. She's a podcaster, she's a mother, she's a storyteller, she's a writer, and she's a servant leader who helps those who have suffered in silence due to trauma, particularly adults dealing with childhood trauma. Ranee herself is an overcomer of trials, tragedies, and trauma by her own description. Her life is a living testimony of how others can transition from the residual effects of their adversities to their personal best in health and in wellness. So before I go anymore, you can check out the setup of this Perseverance speaker in action. We'll be right back.
Have you ever experienced trials, tragedies, and traumas that have left you reeling? I'm talking about these adversities. They have come up on you and they are so tough that they have knocked you off your feet. You have landed flat on your back. They have shaken you to the very core of your soul. And now you find yourself battling double-mindedness, thoughts of doubt, and you are tired, absolutely tired of contending with the issues of life. So much so that you have remained stuck and dissatisfied with the way things are going for you. But you know beyond a shadow of a doubt, God has a more rewarding purpose for you, and you earnestly want to attain or achieve that higher plan. Is there anybody in the house who can relate to that on any level today? Anybody? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, I'm not alone here. Okay. I totally get it. In other words, right? Because I have totally been right there with you, stuck. Yeah. In that same space. Okay. Where, it seemed like I was there for a lifetime. Okay. And so then in my mind, the question is, how do we get unstuck? Right? That is the paramount question in this instance.
Wow. Welcome in the Ranee Jones. I'm switching us around right mid-screen. There we go. Ranee Jones, the Hope Bird. Tell me about that. You had a little title in there. How are you? And tell me about the Hope Bird.
I'm great, Vera. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. You look great. So
You too.
Thanks for having me on. So the Hope Bird, well, it derived from a place within me where I decided that where it came to me anyways, that you can't really do much of anything until you have hope. You can't take wings and soar until you have hope. And so what ended up happening was it just came to me that I wanted to, in the Bible, it talks about a few animals, and one of the animals that the Bible talks about is how superior the eagle is, and how the eagle can soar high above the storm. And so it was as if the Spirit of the Lord spoke to me and said, you know what, you're a hope bird. You're a bird of hope. So from that came the Hope Bird. So because I'm delivering a world of hope that transforms nations. So
got it. So the Hope Bird resides her nest in Indianapolis. Born and raised?
Born and raised, absolutely.
All right. Well, what's keeping the eagle busy these days?
Well, I have just come off of a summit That was huge. It was a good time, and that was the first international summit I've ever done, and
Hmm. Hmm.
just and so it was wonderful. I've been doing a lot of interviews on different platforms with different show hosts, and
Hmm.
just getting my visibility out there. I've even been featured in a magazine, and just a lot of things have been happening, and I'm excited. I really am, and I'm honored and truly blessed. I just believe God's hand is on me, because He is opening doors for me that no man can shut, and shutting doors behind me that no man can open, clearly. So I've been busy with that. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm
All
also
of the.
working on Treasures for Trauma, my nonprofit organization. I'm right now working on developing summits for kids, where we'll have lots of presentations and people from the political arena. I am also an advocate for healthy and prosperous and safe laws, and against, of course, those that are not. So I write letters to the Congress men and women and legislation. So I'm going to have some of those people come in. I'm going to have speakers come in, folks from the health field come in, and there are going to be
Mhm.
lots of speakers. And we're going to talk about families and how we as adults in the community can better serve children and make the world a better place and a safer place for them. So that's what I'm working on next.
Well, when you first came into the Perseverance Speakers Academy, I remember everyone that comes into the academy has that evaluation session, right? That very first session where you have to
I remember.
just kind of tell your story, right? And I
Yeah.
know because you were like, I'm sweating bullets. And I was like, it's not
Yeah.
that deep. It's not that deep. But everybody gets that way because I don't know why, but everybody does. But I remember hearing you, even from the beginning, and sitting back and going, oh, wow, your voice was so powerful. Your style was authoritative and yet sincere and moving and passionate. And all of these words were just kind of spewing out of me. And I recognized the fact that I recognized almost immediately that you were a woman that no matter what it was in your past, you no longer were silent about your story, and you were passionate about the purpose it could have in the lives of other people. And that's what I really wanted to get into a little bit, because the whole point of Perseverance Live is to learn about these perseverance speakers who are out there with a voice that is changing the world. And I speak with pride and I speak with encouragement to all of you that are out there watching. By the way, I always like to take the time to say thank you for all of those of you that are tuning in on Facebook as well as YouTube Live. Really appreciate you tuning in and hearing some of these really powerful messages. I hope that it makes a huge difference in your life moving forward. So Ranee Jones, when you came in, one of the things we work on is the setup. And as part of your setup, you took us into your childhood. Tell us about that childhood a little bit, if you will.
Okay. Sure. So I was born and raised here again in Indianapolis, Indiana. I am a Naptown girl through and through. And I went to North Central High School, had a regular childhood, looking from the outside in, everybody would think, I had a great childhood, it was pretty good. I graduated from there, and, everything was normal. You would think, everybody would think. But the thing that would stand out about my story is, by the time I was in 5th grade, I realized I was being abused. And so it, things just changed for me at that point, because what was happening was I had started to develop physically, and my stepfather's behaviors started to change toward me at that point, from what I can recall. Now, when you endure trauma, sometimes your memory can do what some people call play tricks on you, but I call it loving me to life. Because the brain, God in his infinite wisdom made the brain so that it will protect us sometimes from memories that are too much for us to handle. Okay. And so perhaps I was being molested before 5th grade and I don't realize it. But yeah, that is pretty much my story. And what happened was, by the time I was probably in about, I'm going to say 10th grade, the beginning of 11th grade. I was about 16 years old. My stepfather would come into my room in the mornings, and this is when he would begin to molest me. He would, touch me and do inappropriate things that he had no business doing. And one morning when he came into my bedroom, I was just done. I was done, and it was as if the Spirit of the Lord was with me. Clearly, I am a Christian. My background is very strong. I'm a firm believer that God has been with me through my entire journey. And I know some of you are probably thinking, how can you say that? If that's the case, he allowed you to be molested. A lot of things happen in life. A lot of bad things happen in life, and we don't have the answers for them. But I can tell you this: I have come out better and stronger, having gone through these trials and traumas and tragedies. So, he ended up coming in there that morning, and I rose up. The Spirit of the Lord I remember just feeling like I was like on fire. There was like this feeling that was like you would think I had like some sort of a yellow glow all around me that you could see. I was just filled with, just, I guess, the anointing, and I was fearless. And I just rose up, and there was a face off in my bedroom between my stepfather and I. And at the end of the day, that's when the abuse stopped for me. On that day, it ended. So
that fearlessness comes out in so many ways, but it didn't come out immediately. You talked also about how this has been decades of overcoming. And your story is very, very similar to so many out there who have suffered childhood abuse or trauma or molestation. For those that don't know, talk a little bit about why, because a lot of times, it's unnerving. You hear on stories, particularly with rape victims or things like that. Why does it take you so long to speak out? Why does it take you so long to say anything? What's your take on that?
Well, there are a lot of reasons why. I mean, there are a plethora, endless reasons as to why victims and survivors of childhood abuse, why we do not speak up. And for me, it was because I was in a family. As a child, you don't want to be a troublemaker. You don't want to cause trouble in your family. You don't want to be the cause of the two people in your life who are serving as your parents, because for me, it was as if I lived in a two-parent home. My stepfather was the only father I ever knew. So I didn't want my parents fighting. I didn't want them to break up. I didn't want there to be a divorce and then have it be my fault. Children are always, no matter what happens in a family, in a household, they always take the onus upon themselves. It's always their fault in their minds. Somehow, even though it is so not our fault as children, we believe it's our fault. And so I didn't want to be the cause of trouble. And I didn't know what was going to happen to us if daddy left. I didn't know. And I didn't know if my mother was going to be mad at me. I didn't know my mother was a giant. She was the most powerful force in my mind, in my life. And so I did not want my mother angry with me. And so as far as family goes, you just don't want to cause problems. So you keep silent. You're afraid. You're afraid of what the fallout. And so that fear forces you. It does what I call force you into silence.
When was it for you, or what was it for you? When did you finally come around and say, enough, my voice needs to be heard on this? And what was the impetus behind that for you?
Well, my story is layered because that day in the bedroom, that was the beginning of me standing up and saying, you know what, we're done here. This is not going to happen anymore. We're done. And at that point, I remember on that day, I decided that, win, lose, tie, or draw, no matter what the outcome, I'm standing up and I'm saying we're done here. And so that was the beginning, but I never uttered a word. And so some of you may have heard me tell my story before, but I never uttered one single word. There was not a word spoken between us. And yet there was this intense, and I'm talking about heated and fierce face off. in my bedroom between my stepfather and I. And he and I both knew that, that was it. Either for me, I had decided either I'm going to blow up the set. I'm just going to go off in here. I'm going to scream and shout and yell and raise all kinds of sand and wake up the entire house and even the neighborhood. Everybody's going to know what you've been doing to me. Or you're going to go away and you're never going to do this again. But but either way, we're done here. It ends today, So that was the first time that I stood up for myself and sort of broke the silence, because so many times it's as when you're going through the child abuse, there's always an elephant in the room, okay, so to speak, because the issue is there and it's larger than life. It's always looming and it's filling up the air and the space, and you can't breathe and you can't move and you can't have your being. It's there and you're always walking on eggshells. And I remember I lived in constant fear. I was always in fear. I was running from him. I knew by the time he was going to get home. And so I would go into my room and shut the door. He wouldn't see me anymore. I remember at the end of school, when I was in middle school, I remember my head, it would just start to bang, bang, bang every single day right before the end of school, and so these things would happen. And then later on in life, I remember I had a showdown with my parents that I haven't talked about before. And there was literally a face off. I called a meeting and there was a face off. And so, and then there was there were several times when there were face offs, and because I wasn't the only one my stepfather abused. There were others. There were others. And so this is how you know that my mother knew. This is how you know that other adults knew, and nobody did anything to help me. Nobody. So this is why I'm out here doing Treasure. This is what caused the birth of Treasures for Trauma. This is why I'm doing it. And I want to break the silence. I want to make it so that we live in a society where it is not an uncomfortable, or it is not an inappropriate conversation to have. There's a place and a time for everything, but at the same time, we live in a society where nobody wants to hear what we have to say as survivors. And it is imperative that we get to speak our piece, because when we speak up, when we open our mouths, when we lift our voices and tell our truths, it sets us free. And so why then is it that we have to shut down? Society wants to shut us down and shut us up. We don't get to be free. Yeah, well, wow. But here again, the buck stops here. We're done. We're done with that. We're done with not speaking our piece, and with we now, and it's as if society is treating us as they're victimizing us all over again. We've already been victimized. And now society wants to continuously, keep us silent and keep us in the trauma. And I'm saying no more through Treasures for Trauma.
That's so courageous. I was pulling up some statistics, knowing that I was going to talk to you again tonight. And you've really, really opened my eyes, and I think a lot of people's eyes and hearts about what's going on, and thinking about getting more involved. Pulled up, some this one from Darkness to Light, who says 1 in 10 children, actually, I'm showing 1 in 5 in other studies, but 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before the age of 18. Again, other studies are estimating 1 in 5 girls, 1 in 12 and a half boys. 60% of child sexual abuse victims never tell anyone. I personally know on a whole hand people who have gone well into their 40s and 50s before they ever told a soul. And I happen to be one of those people that got told. A huge percent of children who are sexually abused, 20% are abused before the age of 8. The YWCA reports that the younger the victim, the more likely the abuser is a family member. Family members account for about 50% of reported cases of children who are 6 years and younger. And 23% of those cases of children are children of ages 12 to 17. And about 93% of child victims of sexual abuse know their abuser. And when you think about those startling, painful statistics, what you're saying about having a voice, and that to victimize them all over again is shameful. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so getting involved and having a voice and doing what you're doing is noble, it's courageous, and it's absolutely needed.
Thank you.
Just thinking about that, I'm going to take a brief break. Don't you all go anywhere, and by all means, please feel free to stay around afterwards. Ranee has told us she will stick around for 5 or 10 minutes. I know that there's some people that might want to talk about this and ask some questions. We're certainly going to allow you that chance to do it. But first, we're going to pay a bill, just one teeny weeny one.
In today's busy, fast-paced world, you need hydration that can go the distance with you. Face it, most sports drinks are more like soda. Many contain tons of sugar, artificial flavoring, artificial colors, and artificial ingredients, sometimes leaving you feeling sluggish, nauseous, and bloated. Well, there's a new sports drink in town, and she's got game. Introducing Electra, supernatural hydration for everyday doers, hustlers, and athletes.
Hi, it's Vera Jones. I am a motivational speaker, a communication coach, and founder of the Perseverance Speakers Academy. Let me ask you a quick question. What drives you? If it is not your purpose or your passion, you're probably going in the wrong direction. How do I know? Because every day I'm driven by my passion to help other people, ordinary people, become extraordinary speakers through the Perseverance Speakers Academy. What do you need to do if it's starting to buzz you right now and you're starting to go, gosh, I've been dreaming about this, I've been thinking about this? Well, reach out to me. Free consultation is available for you at ps-vera.com. Go there now. Get yourself out of park. It's time for your dreams to have a place to go. ps-vera.com. I look forward to getting you going in the right direction. And don't hate me because I'm witty and clever. All right, so we have been talking to Ranee Jones, and yes, you're keeping up with the Joneses on Perseverance Live. I am Vera Jones. That is Ranee Jones. I always end up on the wrong side of this thing. I'm over here. I want to be over here, right? But we were talking about trials, tragedies, and trauma, particularly as it pertains to your life. But now let's take a look a little bit about those out there and how they can get help. One of the best parts of hearing you speak, Ranee, was hearing the takeaways, how you have already, you're not a doctor, but you don't play one on TV, right? But you have been through this and you have those experiences, and you have figured out how self-awareness, self-accountability, self-advocacy, being authentic, and being willing to be courageous to have a voice have all helped you. Talk about some of those takeaways. If someone is out there who is dealing with this and maybe they've been sitting on their childhood trauma or other abuse for a very, very long time, can you give them some help, a little bit of advice?
Sure. Well, just with us talking about breaking the silence, I'll start there, because it is imperative, I find, okay, and in talking with other survivors, I find that it is imperative that we find our voices and that we tell our truths. Because when we're able to do that, that's when we get free. We're able to break free from the chains that bind us. That is trauma, okay? And the heavy burden that the abuse and the stigma of the abuse carries. What happens is when you are able to, what I call, when you're able to analyze and acknowledge your truth, when you're able to get real with yourself about your real story, what really happened to you. Because a lot of times, and I say that because a lot of times we don't want to admit the truth about what happened to us, especially when it is as ugly as something like child abuse. We don't want to admit it. I didn't want to admit it. For many years, I did not admit it. I lived in a place called denial. And I often tell people, don't dawdle in denial. Well, I didn't dawdle in denial. I dwelled there. I was there for 40 long years. That's 4 decades, friends, where I was not honest with myself because I wanted to believe I had this the great childhood that it appeared I had to the rest of the world, to people who were on the outside looking in. Okay. So I wanted to believe that. I didn't want to believe, and I didn't want to believe that my parents, the people who were in the positions as parents in my life, could love me so little as to hurt me so greatly. This pain is a pain, and this suffering is such suffering that it is long reaching. And Vera talked about how some people don't tell their truths until they're into their 30s and 40s. Well, I know of people, okay, they've reached out to me and contacted me because they've been harboring their heavy, horrible secrets for as until their 70s. Okay, so can you imagine? Because society doesn't want you to talk about these terrible, ugly tragedies that you've endured, because it's inappropriate to talk about. Can you imagine harboring these secrets all of that time and not being able to get free from that trauma? So that's the most important thing, is acknowledging your truth, owning your truth, and then finding a way to gain the courage it takes to begin to tell your truth. And you can start by, I started telling my truth by talking to my dogs as a kid. I would talk to my dogs because they couldn't tell my truth. I would talk to my dollies because they couldn't tell my truth. And then when I started driving, okay, I would even go to the cemetery and talk to people that I loved and who had passed away, and I would tell them my truths. So until I got the courage to tell my truth to living people, who could hear and understand and have empathy.
What do you want for the survivors, for the childhood victims that are watching this and probably in complete paralysis, realizing that they've come face to face with a hard truth, and someone that is so direct and so authoritative as you, speaking directly to them? What do you want them to know? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do?
Well, what I hope for you, okay, for the survivors, those of you who are survivors like myself out there, what I hope for you is that you will come to a place like I have experienced. Okay, it was a long journey. It was hard. It was tough. It was heartbreaking, heart-wrenching work for me to do, interpersonal work for me to do. But I had to get naked before God. Okay. Talk about coming to Jesus conversation with myself. That's what it took. It took some reaching down in the depths of my soul. Okay. And applying the ointment, the balm from, like the balm in Gilead. And so that I could mend the holes in my soul and make the crooked places straight. So this is what I'm hoping for you, is that you will be able to analyze your story, to own the truths that you uncover, okay? And to walk in your liberty once you began to tell your truth, okay? And there are some other things, but that more than anything, those are the first steps. Right. And you have to be able to, when I say courage, it takes courage, because all of the reasons you didn't tell the truth, your truth until now, are still viable reasons for you not to tell your truth, for you to continue to live in secrecy and silence. So you have to face it, and you have to find the courage and then tell your truth and get free.
Well, thank you.
I can't say that enough.
Thank you so much for your courage to not just come here, but to have found the faith, the focus, and the fortitude to come on and become one of our proud perseverance speakers. Really appreciate your story. You're helping so many people. Your commitment, your conviction, and your communication, all important. Ranee Jones, founder of Treasures for Trauma. That wraps up another episode of Perseverance Live. If you have an interest in becoming a member of the Perseverance Speakers Academy and learning to share your story to educate and inspire others, you can always reach out to me on a completely free consultation at psvera.com. Remember, in the middle of overcoming adversity or perseverance, there is Vera, which means faith. Never doubt what God will do with yours. I'm Vera Jones. That's Ranee Jones. And we are Perseverance Live. Stick around. If you have questions, Ranee says that she will stay here. And in fact, we will go to them right now. Let's see if we can overhear. Okay. Hi, Terry Jo. God bless you. She says, stand strong. We are here and love you. Carla Cullen Brown is here. Thank you, Dean, for showing up. Tiny, thank you. So we have a bunch of folks. Do we have any questions right now? Like I said, Ranee has stuck around. She has done a lot in terms of self-advocacy. And now she's advocating for others who are victims of or survivors of childhood abuse and trauma. Any questions? Hi, Willie Brown. Good to see you. Any questions for Ranee? One of the ones I have as people are typing in is just, what do you do or what can we look for? You kind of mentioned signs when a child is being molested, signs when a child might not be telling their stories. Is there something that you would suggest that people, parents, as well as teachers or anyone else that's just genuinely concerned, can look for?
Well, the one thing that I'm so glad you asked this question. Oh my gosh, nobody has ever asked this question. So I'm so glad. So here's the thing, the behavior of the child changes. I know for me, there were points where I began to act out. The child doesn't know how to get the parents' attention, or how to get other adults' attention. They don't have the courage. They can't find the fortitude to approach another adult or an adult aside from their abuse, to tell on their abuser. And so they may begin to act out, and have, what we would call bad behavior, unbecoming behavior. They may begin to, become an introvert if they were kids who were always smiling and laughing and having a good time and interacting with others. All of a sudden, you find this kid is quiet and they don't have two words to say. So you just really want to watch the countenance and the behavior, of your child. And that will tell you. I personally had a situation where, and it's rough out here. It's for single women. If you want to date, it's tough. But I had a guy I was dating at one point who was not nice to one of my children, and I noticed a change in this child's behavior, and because I had been abused, and I had held it against my mother for years for not noticing the changes in my behavior and not doing anything. I noticed their behavior very quickly. And so I pulled them to the side and addressed it, And so these are the things you have to be aware of, as women. We have to be aware, and just parents in general.
Wow. Very powerful. I think your story is just going to resonate in so many places. And I think one of the biggest things that you brought out of this is just, being a communication coach. One of the hardest things that I have to deal with that isn't even close, barely touches the surface of what we're talking about here, but helping people identify with their truth in general, right? Sometimes it's just, I'm just afraid to speak because, I was bullied as a kid, or I'm just afraid because I'm just naturally shy or whatever. And so you think about all of those just inherent issues that anybody has. And then you take it one step further and you think about someone who has held in this pain for so long and how hard it is. And I say over and over again, that's why self-awareness, self-acceptance, doing the hard homework is in any endeavor is important, but certainly if you have been through this experience. You have been invaluable. I don't see any questions popping up here, but if there's anything that you want to share on your way of saying goodbye, give us another thought or two, and then we'll bounce off.
Well, something you just said made me think of something. And another reason why children don't tell is because they feel like nobody's going to believe them anyway. And you know what? And the thing about it is, this is what I'm talking about. This is the society we live in. you know, where children are being molested or children are being abused physically, you know, mentally, emotionally, and they don't feel like, they don't have a connection with anybody on planet Earth where they feel like they will be believed. Somebody will believe them and do something to deliver them from the abuse they're enduring, you know. And so I just want to say, you know, we've got to make ourselves more approachable. Somehow we've got to make children know that I'm a safe place for you. I'm a safe place for you, and not make them feel like, you know what, nobody's going to believe me. And even if I tell her she's not going to do anything, he's not going to do anything anyway. And then this abuser is going to make things worse on me because I've told.
I saw a statistic today. I want to say I was reading a whole bunch of them, but I want to say this one was from the YWCA. I hate when I don't quote my source. But off the top of my head, I do remember the number. It said that 98% of the reports that kids did share, 98% of the reports that had come in from children were found to be true. That is an extremely high statistic, and even more of the reason why young children, and I know we may or may not have young children watching this, I don't know, but it's just so important to allow them to have that voice to speak it.
Absolutely.
So important.
One more thing, if you don't mind. I've been saying this lately. Don't mind your business.
Ooh,
Don't mind your business. That's another reason why, that's one of the reasons why people don't report when they know. Even though like in Indiana, it's a mandatory report state, people will know, like in my story, that a child is being abused and they won't report because they're saying, you know, that's none of my business. That's that man's business. That's that household, those adults, that's their business down there in that house. But the thing is, whenever we don't report, there's a cost. There's a price to be paid.
Right.
And it's always that child that pays the greatest cost. So don't mind your own business. I'll tell you what, I said it like this: mind your own business until it comes to the point of child abuse. Then break the silence with intention to deliver that child from that abusive situation. Don't mind your business.
There's a question that came in. How important is it for the abuse victims to know there's no embarrassment in speaking up about their abuse?
Here again, that is so important. That is a great question. That is so important. It goes right along with, you know, nobody's going to believe me. You know, they're going to believe the abuser over me. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to be humiliated because this is such a nasty, dirty, filthy, you know, the stigma that comes along with it, even though the child didn't do anything wrong. They are as clean as a driven snow. They didn't do a thing wrong. And all of the onus, the culpability belongs on that abuser. So know that if there are any children listening, if there are any victims out there listening, know that it is not your fault. This is not your fault. And also, too, I hate to say this. I the first time I said it, I broke down. I just broke down. But I hate to say this. If there is anybody who's watching and they are being abused, I'm asking you to please hang in there. I'm asking you to please hang in there. I thought about suicide. I thought about running away. I thought about all kinds of things. And you know something? I'm so glad that I did not commit suicide, because think about it. Had I ended my life back then, I would not be here saying what I'm saying to you right now. So please don't end it. Understand this: what goes on in the dark will come to light. The cavalry is coming. There are those of us out here praying. We are praying for you every single day, because we understand firsthand what this thing is about, that life of abuse and the fear and the terror that you live in. So please hang in there. It will come to an end. I promise you that, if you just hang in there.
That's good word. That's great word. You are the hope bird indeed. Thank you. Thank you for singing that. You got an amen over in the chat over
amen.
here. So,
amen to you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And we could go on. I could sit here and listen to you all night with my heart bleeding and aching the whole time. And yet and still, I could still sit here and listen to you. And so I'm so very, very thankful and proud of you for having this voice. I am so blessed that you came through the Perseverance Speakers Academy. I am excited about what we will go on to do in the future. You have some thank yous also in the chat. People are thankful for your voice. More people will hear that voice. And most importantly, for everyone that is listening, we all can be that voice, right? We all can. And if we're not the voice, we certainly can be the ear for those children that are reaching out, trying to say help. So many crazy things that are going on in our society. But there are good things, like people like Ranee Jones, who's willing to be here and to speak out on behalf. Once again, proving that pain sometimes becomes your purpose, and that purpose is always to serve someone else. So can't thank you enough for just coming on and just opening your heart and being real, being connected and convicted with us today. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having me, Vera. I appreciate it.
And for all of you that are listening and tuning in, we thank you for persevering with us, and we'll catch you next time on Perseverance Live. That wraps it up for us, and we'll see you around. God bless. Good night.
Good night.